Good afternoon. This is the first of what I suspect will be a number of conversations between me. I'm Dr. Jim Brewbaker here in the College of Education and Health Professions, and some key people on campus like Dr. Mescon here today, people in the community, people who are involved one way or another in the education and health communities, both on campus and beyond campus. Our first guest is Dr. Timothy Mescon, who became Columbus State President probably July 1 of 2008 and has been at it ever since. There have been some ups and downs. I was interested that Jim Lynn of Columbus in the Valley wrote this about you very soon after your arrival on campus. The new Columbus State University president seems to have enough energy to run a handful of colleges. Foot-twitching energy. Tell me about that energy a little bit. Where does that come from, and are you as energetic now as you were 3 years ago?
Well, and first of all, Jim, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, as always, to be on COE HPTV, and honored and very proud of what you and Professor Baltimore and the team have accomplished here. It's a great success story.
Thank you.
For us. Today is a great example. Left our home in Columbus a good bit before sunup this morning and met one of our great enrollment recruiters, Greg Moncrief, in Paulding County this morning, where we toured a number of high schools in the Northwest Metro Atlanta quadrant. This was my second time touring with Greg in the last couple of weeks.
And I know you think that's really important in the recruitment effort, right?
Absolutely.
And you learn a lot too, perhaps, huh?
No question. But to point to sort of the average day. I work in this case with a group of crack enrollment recruiters. Usually spend at least a half a day with them in any area beginning from Columbus in the Valley up through the North Metro Atlanta arc. Then get back to campus where we've got other real work to do as well.
And so what time did you arrive back on campus?
I got back on campus about 45 minutes ago.
Wow. Let me ask you this. I imagine who watches a program of this sort, and I think to myself, well, I envision a faculty member perhaps who's good at what she does or good at what he does, but maybe doesn't even exactly know what you do. And so I'm going to just be very direct and say, what does a university president do anyway?
Sure. Well, obviously supporting and advocating institutional initiatives at all levels is just is paramount, is really critical. Yesterday, just as an example, this week we had an extraordinary graduate research conference on campus, hosting the Chief Academic Officer for the university system, Dr. David Morgan, spoke at the conference. The conference was driven by our Associate Provost, Dr. Greg Doman, and really was an exclamation point around this university's initiatives in graduate education, scholarship, research, and creative activity. Mm-hmm. Last night at Legacy Hall, Professor Paul Hostetter, our Foley Distinguished Chair of Conducting, led our Columbus State University Philharmonic to nearly a packed audience at Legacy Hall, and it was an exceptional initiative.
Well, you and I share a passion for the Schwab School of Music, and perhaps Professor Hostetter in particular, and
Absolutely.
His incredible work.
No question.
Right.
So it was.
So the hardest part of your job is not going to concerts.
Well, no, and it's like everything I do. It's really a labor of love with the commitment to serving in this capacity. But I think on a regular basis, interacting, on campus with students, faculty, and staff in a variety of efforts is critically important. Engaging alumni and supporters of the university is also critically important. And what we have learned critically over the last 3.5 years is active involvement with the Board of Regents, with the University System of Georgia, with both our own legislative delegation and a broader constituency of state representatives and state senators, as well as our representatives in the U.S. House and in the Senate, are critical elements.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. I know I heard you speak a couple of years ago to the point that Columbus State University did not have the sort of clout with the regents that you felt was necessary and desirable to promote our growth over time. How's that going anyway?
Great question. What we've tried to choreograph over the last 3.5 years is that this university is represented visibly at every monthly Board of Regents meeting. Generally, I'm there, the provost is there, our chief business officer is there. Oftentimes when we've got academic issues on the agenda, we have representatives from the faculty, department heads, or deans present as well. The university, just in the last 2 weeks, hosted the University System of Georgia's Facility Officers Conference. We had over 300 facilities officers here from all over the university system. Last week, I met with a group of system-wide chief information officers at Rock Eagle, the state's 4-H facility. And in the last month, I'm very honored that Chancellor Hank Huckabee has asked me to chair the Shared Services Advisory Council for the University System of Georgia, which really has oversight over the system's new Shared Services Center that was created in Sandersville, Georgia. Mm-hmm. So I'm very proud to be heading that effort.
I'm going to be a little dense. Shared services include X, Y, and Z of some sort?
Very fair question. The previous chancellor, Errol Davis, made a determination based on national trends to centralize what many would call backroom university operations in human resources, payroll, benefits initially at one centralized location using a third-party vendor, in this case ADP, to really provide oversight for this effort. It's had fits and starts, but making great progress. In the new chancellor, who's been in the position just 4 or 5 months, decided he wanted to create a new advisory council, reconstitute a new advisory council chaired by a single University System of Georgia institutional president to oversee this.
And I assume in the name of efficiency and economy, by and large.
Correct.
Fine.
That's exactly correct. And the intent there is really a long-term effort to see some economic efficiencies redound to the system, but also increase the effectiveness of delivering these services to both currently active faculty, staff, and students, but also retirees from the system.
And I don't know, our viewers may or may not be aware that I am among the retirees and have done some business with ADP. Gave them a call, and I couldn't even figure out what ADP stood for precisely. And though we've worked things out well enough that if I were given a multiple choice test, I might get it right, but I might not. So I want to go back to my first question about what university presidents do. I'm imagining a pie chart of your typical week, and I begin to think there is no such thing. Is that a possible
I would say to some extent that's a fair assessment. I mean, I think there are a variety of activities, initiatives that emerge that disrupt a standard week, if you will. I try to systematically blog, as you know, to keep the university's community aware of a variety of key activities or takeaways as well. But I would say there is no consistent template for what any given week.
From time to time, I think perhaps you have a twin, because it seems like wherever I go, there you are, in a way, and I admire that to a point. And then I think, what does this guy do for fun anyway? And so I'm going to turn to a somewhat more personal level. What do you do for fun when you're not wearing your president hat?
Right. Well, I've got it's very important, I think, to note I've got a very supportive spouse.
Yes.
Lauren has been incredibly active in this community as well, but also very supportive.
And she's an attorney, I believe.
She is.
Is she able to practice now?
She relinquished her 30-year practice when we moved here, and has gotten involved in a host of volunteer activities in this community, and I'm very proud of all of those. We have 4 adult children.
3 boys and a girl,
That's
I believe.
right.
Yeah.
And who require occasional interaction and support and advocacy. And
I haven't heard you mention grandchildren yet, so
no,
I
there are
suspect
none.
there are none.
None are married.
All
at this
in
point
due
time.
course.
That's
huh?
correct.
Yeah.
And so we enjoy doing things around the home. We're active cyclists. We're exercise enthusiasts. We enjoy getting to spend some time together and really socializing with friends as well.
And I think you're a learner too. What do you do to learn? I think of keeping fit, having fun, and learning as sort of a three-headed character there. What do you learn? What have you been learning lately?
I think it's a great question. I'm a big believer in lifelong learning and professional development. I think that's critical for all of us.
By the way, at my age, this turns out to be working crossword puzzles and going to concerts and plays. But I learn, and it matters. But
I am finishing up the final draft of a new entrepreneurship text with a colleague at Cal State. At Fresno, as well as at University of Portland in Oregon, and that's an important project for us. The 3 of us have worked together on research for decades.
And of course, entrepreneurship is sort of your.
That's right.
That's your turf.
It is.
It's
really an academic passion of mine. I
Yeah.
just returned from the national meeting for ASCU, which is the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, 400 plus colleges and universities that have a look and feel like Columbus State University, where I serve on the professional development committee there as well. And that's a very important reference group, if you will, in terms of professional development as well. Listen, late August we had our annual Jim Blanchard Leadership Forum, and which kicked off with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice.
Right.
That in and of itself is an extraordinary.
Her book is very much in the news these days, and she is as well.
So try to stay, actively engaged, reading, writing, guest lecturing where appropriate, and because that's what our profession is all about.
Let me ask you, since you mentioned Lauren, I hope I may call her that.
Sure.
My wife gives me a lot of advice, and every now and then I follow it. And when I don't, I really wish I had. What kind of advice does Lauren Mescon whisper in your ear from time to time? It's just now Tim, da-da-da-da. Either don't do this or do that.
She's great source of similar counsel to me. I think her biggest concern is really about literally the amount of time that I spend on campus or at university activities, and the fact that sometimes she believes that just goes on tilt, that it's just incredible amounts of time and
adrenaline.
Well, it is, but and we discussed that it's really it really just goes with the territory. That whether it's at a soccer match, or we just this week we had our opening two non-season basketball games,
right.
and you'll want to be there. I mean, you want to participate in that. You want to interact with students, staff, and faculty and supporters. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, while we're engaged in this interview, the CSU women's soccer team is in Augusta playing the second round of the Peach Belt Conference.
Well, and we were out of town this
playoffs.
past weekend, so I wasn't sure how
they won. They
their
beat University of North Carolina Pembroke. They had a home match this week, so the second round is in Augusta.
Fabulous.
And
you wish you were there.
But it's streaming, and so when we finish here, I'll get on the internet.
All right,
and see
maybe
how
I
we
need to do that as well.
That'd be great.
Roll back a few decades. I'm not sure quite how many, but you've graduated from Tulane, got a master's degree. At what point do you apply to and find yourself in higher education as a faculty member?
Well, yeah, and I went from Tulane, went to Southern Methodist University, and got an MBA, and then had the pleasure of attending the University of Georgia's Terry College. This is my 33rd year in higher ed, my 22nd in the university system of Georgia, and it's been a great learning odyssey for me at different kinds of institutions, different stops along the way.
Now, one can make a pretty decent living with as an MPA or certified public accountant, and yet at some point you decided that your future was in higher education, initially as a faculty member and then as an administrator. Do you recall how you made that decision, or do we just kind of find ourselves doing something that it feels right?
It's a great question. I think in this case it's very unusual that our interim provost, Tom Hackett, and I both had similar experiences as growing up in an academics household. My dad was a lifelong professor and actually is teaching for the 56th consecutive year at Georgia State University. And but he retired over 20 years ago. Just teaches one course a year there and loves it.
Wow. So it runs in the family.
It was an interesting. It was an interesting. I had a great role model, and I just sort of fell into this process.
Well.